skies over the Jefferson Memorial here in our nation's capital. We are live at Nationals Park for the 89th All-Star Game on an absolutely beautiful Monday morning, at least at 6:30 a.m. on the East Coast. This is First Things First. We have taken the show on the road. I am Jenna Wolfe, sitting alongside the Hall of Famer, Cris. It's great to have you here. Nick Wright, it is great to be here with you. It is going to be a fun 3 hours on a perfect day.
I'm so excited to be out here. It brings up slight memories to me. It was 1 year ago, almost today, that this show was somewhat formally introduced to the public. Cris and I sitting at the most recent All-Star Game. Then shortly thereafter added Jenna Wolfe a year in. Very excited. This is my first time in this ballpark. So I'm very excited to be here.
Perfect.
It's great. Yeah.
Beautifully manicured. Looks great.
What type of grass we going with,
Yeah,
C?
go ahead, tell us.
We got a little blend here, a little outfield here in Washington. You're not necessarily all the way on the East Coast, a little to the south. Get a little humidity here, so you can't just have one type of grass. It will burn off in the summer humidity, so we'll get to that later in the show.
CC, our landscaping expert, among other things.
Yeah, I'm describing the grass. Jenna's doing all the monuments.
Absolutely right.
I'm going to get off that corner real fast. I got my first one, and I'm good to go. All right, we are going to start, since we are here at Nationals Park. Let's talk some baseball. The hottest division in baseball right now is the American League East. The Boston Red Sox with a 4.5-game lead over the Yankees at the break, but it feels a lot closer than that. Since these two teams played just 2 weeks ago, the Red Sox have been on a tear. They've won 12 of 13. While the Yankees have gone just 8-6, and here we are at the midway point. Nick, I'll start with you. How do you think this plays out now in the second half?
Well, typically a 4.5-game lead at the break isn't much. You can overcome that, especially when it's in your division. They're going to play each other another 10 times. But when the team you're trailing in Boston is on pace for 112 wins, hard to find those losses to make up. I mean, the Yankees are having a spectacular season. I understand last year they were way ahead of schedule. This year they are setting a new schedule entirely. They're on pace for 106 wins, which would be the most in Major League Baseball in nearly 15 years, yet they find themselves 4.5 games back at the break. There's no shame in going 8-6 over a 14-game stretch, but going 8-6 while the Red Sox only lose once in 2 weeks, now you find yourself 4.5 games back. Of course, the Yankees could come back and win the division, but the Red Sox are playing so well, a 4.5-game lead almost seems like enough at the midway point.
Yeah, that is a huge lead at the break, given what they're doing, Nick. You mentioned the win total they're on pace for, but it's also the hitting and the pitching. When people say, well, the Yankees, they're on pace to break the home run record. Yeah, but will good hitting, being the long ball, be better than good pitching? And we have seen in the postseason, you want the good pitching. That's what the Red Sox have. What are the huge differences between where these organizations are, the starting pitchers of Boston, and what they're able to do on the night-in, night-out basis, and what the Red Sox and their lack of consistency. The Yankees, with their lack of consistency with their starting pitchers outside of Severino and CC Sabathia, they've struggled.
Listen, Severino's been great, and Sabathia has been, I think, better than most people would expect at this advanced age, but you're absolutely right. But the fact that the Yankees, we're going to point out, because they're trailing the Red Sox, where they need to improve. I know we'll talk about a trade, they can make things like that. During the basketball season, what was my favorite stat with the Houston Rockets? 65 wins, right?
Yeah, there's only 20 teams that have done it. 15 of them won the championship.
Right. So only 20 teams in NBA history had ever won 65 games. And we talked about that all year long. Only 18 teams in baseball history, that goes far longer than NBA history, have ever won 106 games. The Yankees and the Red Sox are both on pace to do that this season. These are two seasons that, if they were happening individually, absent of each other, we would recognize, I think, more so what a torrid pace both these teams are on.
It's also really hard to predict what's going to happen in the second half. Remember, the Yankees started slow. Red Sox started fast. Now then the Red Sox took off, the Yankees dropped out. Now the Red Sox have been red hot, and the Yankees obviously are looking for a little better pitching, and they've slowed down. So this sort of, they've exchanged leads back and forth. The momentum has shifted back and forth, but it just is going to make for just a great second half.
And what we also have is, you have on the Red Sox side, the guy who I believe has been the best player in baseball this year, Mookie Betts, along with what you could argue one of, if not the best pitcher in baseball in Chris Sale. And then on the Yankees side, it has been as advertised. Even though Stanton's not pacing towards 60 home runs like he was last season, it's just, I mean, you said it almost as an aside in the beginning, but we should reiterate it. On pace to break the Major League Baseball all-time home run record for a season. Like, and I mean, that was set by the Mariners in the late 90s. Like, for the Yankees, or at least the Mariners have the record for at the break. And then so I mean, what the Yankees are doing is what we thought once they added Giancarlo Stanton.
Yes, but the Yankees, too, what will they do at the trade deadline? Will they try to add another bat, or will they try to add another arm? I think they need another arm, especially you have to determine when you get down to August and September, how do the Yankees get from their starters to Chapman? Is it someone in mid-relief, or do they go out and acquire another starter? Those are questions that Cashman and the rest of the brass there for the Yankees going to have to answer.
But that's why what we said, they could be 29 games over 500 and on pace to set the home run record, and still 4.5 games back seems like such a discrepancy right now because nothing is safe in the AL East, but it's still, you want to be a little closer than that.
And listen, initially I was skeptical of it. But baseball adding the extra wild card game, the extra wild card team, has been wildly exciting. You guys know I'm from Kansas City. The Royals were involved in an unbelievable game a few years ago that then ended up propelling them all the way to the World Series, a World Series they lost. So I like that more teams are in it. I like that now 5 teams make the playoffs. But there is the odd situation a year like this year where it would look like a team that is likely going to win 100+ games, their whole season's going to come down to one game. And if it is the Yankees, if they can't catch Boston, then that one starting pitcher really, really matters. Then you could be playing an 87-win team that would have the edge because if you like their ace better than you like Severino.
Yeah, I like the wild card. You get an extra team in there. It is one game, but if you don't win your division, I mean, you're lucky to be in there. So I think it's fair. You know, but as you mentioned, it's hard to imagine a team with 100 wins and then they got to win that one game.
Right.
Well, if the Yankees and the Red Sox do have to play for that one game, I'm sure it'll be super easy to get tickets. So that's something we can look forward to. All right, we got to take a break. Coming up, we're going to get to some football on the other side. Why is Terrell Owens skipping the Hall of Fame ceremonies? We'll tell you next on First Things First here at Nationals Park. We are here at Nationals Park. Home Run Derby is tonight. The big game is tomorrow night. First things first on set for both of those, and we are excited to be here. Let's talk about the drama that is Terrell Owens. It has been Terrell Owens versus the Hall of Fame. Advantage Hall of Fame of late. T.O. spoke out over the weekend saying he's skipping the Hall of Fame ceremony. For those who, quote, had to wait. It goes without saying, T.O., many of the greats, quote, had to wait, including our own Chris Carter. CC, you waited 6 years to get into the Hall. What was your reaction to T.O.'s comments?
T.O.'s doing this for you, see? He's doing this for you. You had to wait 6 years. He's doing this for you and your brothers.
Oh, yeah, that's what we're doing. T.O.'s going to be our spokesperson for Lynn Swann. Waited 13 years.
13?
Jack Youngblood waited 11. John Stallworth, his partner, after they won all those Super Bowls, he waited another 9. Myself, Andre Reed, Tim Brown. Of course, T.O., he's not doing this for us. He's doing this for himself. He's trying to make an excuse to try to make his. They asked him a question about Jerry Kramer, one of his classmates. Is going in with him. He said, yeah, a guy like him. It doesn't make sense that he had to wait all this time. But Jerry Kramer, he waited personally. His family waited, but he's going to represent himself. So we don't need anyone to represent us. The guys that have been snubbed by the Hall, that are in the Hall, the great Harry Carson, the Giants linebacker who told them to take him off the list after 10 years. He's in the Hall. I see him every year there, and he's just as proud as anyone else. The thing that T.O. doesn't realize is in the Hall, we're just all one football team. There are no classes. There are no he got in first, and these guys have different privileges than the other players.
So hold on. At the Ray Nitschke luncheon, it's not seated arranged by first ballot Hall of Famers up front, second, third, and then way in the back, it's Lynn Swann. He's like, I'm a 13th ballot. That's not how it works?
Lynn Swann gave a speech at the Ray Nitschke luncheon in 2013 when I got in. He said, Chris, you will not have to answer the question ever again. Who's better between you, Michael Irvin, and Jerry Rice? There is no answer. All you guys are in the same spot. You're on the same team. So Lynn Swann and others have taught me through their humility what it's like to be a Hall of Famer when you've been snubbed by the Hall. And they conduct themselves. It doesn't seem like to hurt their post-career, the things that they're doing. So, no, we know this is about T.O. It's not about anyone else. And you can't represent the players that have been snubbed because we're there representing ourselves, and you can't represent someone who's going to be snubbed in the future because you can't do something for something that hadn't happened yet.
And you mentioned the guys who had to wait, and I want to talk more about that in a moment, but there's a whole nother list that I'm very curious how these guys feel about what T.O.'s doing, and that's guys that never got in. What about our friend Shannon Sharp's brother, Sterling, who, if people are my age, if I'm totally honest with you, or certainly younger, might not have a ton of recollection of how dominant Sterling Sharp was. Like, the one, you have the image of Sterling beating the defense downfield so badly that he can jog parallel with the goal line. You remember that play?
Yes.
They force a fumble on him. He then forces it back, scores anyway. This Sterling was unbelievable. And finished the season, thought he was going to be able to keep playing, and then doctors said, no, your football is done. He was going to be a Hall of Famer. You could argue he should be anyway. He never got in. Ed Too Tall Jones. Now, that's way before my time, but you read about the dominant athlete he was. He never got in. And so there's that class. But then I want to talk about, I have a question for you, Chris, because when the day you stopped playing football, here's the full list of people who had more receiving touchdowns than you. Jerry Rice. That's the list. Here's the full list of people who had more catches than you. Jerry Rice. That's the list. You were, by any metric, the second most productive receiver statistically in football history. And you waited 6 years. How close were you at one point to going this route? And why didn't you? And whether it was just being bitter or angry or lashing out, because your weight was, I thought it was somewhat personal. I thought some of the guys didn't like your how honest, or some would call it brash, you were. But it was an absurdity how long you had to wait. And you could have been bitter. Why weren't you?
Because it's just not worth it. I mean, life is too good, and it's not worth it to continue on that path. I was very upset for a number of years. There's even no logical explanation for me not being in the Hall on the first ballot. So at that time, I was number 2, and at that time, I was number 2 in touchdowns and receptions. So I was very bitter, and I did lash out at the voters, especially the first 2 years, and that probably cost me another couple years. To me, it's about the experience of the group that I'm a part of now. Those years I didn't miss out on anything, but it did bring more of appreciation for what the Hall is about. And being a Hall of Famer now for me is not about what I did on the football field. It's about the person that I am. Can I live up to the standards that the Hall and its members have set for each other? So now I try to live up to the standard of the great Hall of Famers and the life that they've lived after the NFL.
Did you said that you thought because you lashed out the first 2 years that might have kept you from getting in?
Absolutely.
Do you think that's maybe what has happened with T.O. and why he waited? Does he not, maybe doesn't see that correlation?
Wait that long. In comparison,
he wanted to be first ballot.
Well, and listen, just much like Chris should have been, and Randy should have been, and Randy luckily was. But the thing is this: since Jerry Rice, Randy's the first ballot wide receiver. It's either something about the position, or the log jam, or the belief. Sometimes I think what might happen is when a guy has such overwhelming numbers that everyone knew eventually Cris Carter was going to be a Hall of Famer. Everybody knew eventually Terrell Owens was going to be a Hall of Famer.
But did you know that?
Well, I had 130 touchdowns. There's no one alive that had 100 touchdowns and wasn't in the Hall.
Right.
So what else do I need to know? I mean, I know the numbers say that. The reason why I think it's really important that you don't go that way the way T.O. went was because there have been other struggles before. And this is not about you. You talk about the log jam. When T.O. got on the list, there wasn't a log jam. When I got on the list, there started to be a log jam. And also there were players waiting. Jerry Rice came up in my early stages. So that They probably didn't want me and Jerry in the same class, so that set me back another year. My comments set me back a year. Tim Brown being right there, that set me back at least a year or two. Andre Reed being on the list, it set me back. My thing was, the reason why I didn't have this reaction T.O. had, because I wanted them to get through the list. I wanted the Hall of Famers, Tim Brown, and especially Andre Reed at that time, because once they cleared me out, I wanted them to get in. T.O. should be able to send a message about the rules, maybe even changing how it's done. That's what he should use this time for.
And that would be a very selfless thing to use the time for. But even from just a pragmatic, selfish perspective, this is, I obviously don't know what it's like to score touchdowns and be a pro athlete. But I feel like I can imagine, at least somewhat, the adrenaline of an entire stadium cheering for you. This is your last time for the vast majority of Hall of Famers. Their last time where the entire sports world stops and pays attention to them. It's your stage to do with it those 10 to 25 minutes, whatever you want. And there is a universe that exists where Terrell Owens took this in stride and gives a speech that makes us rethink how we have viewed him.
But that universe isn't in our galaxy. It's like not in our solar system.
But it could have been. That's the shame of it all, is you are the choices that you make. And we are a country that, yes, we do love to tear people down, but we also love a comeback story. And if T.O. took that stage and absent of bitterness and tried to explain, if you know anything about his childhood, he had a very traumatic childhood, tried to explain, hey, listen, I know I wasn't always the best guy. It came from a place of wanting to win. Even if it was nonsense, we would have bought into, at least many people would have, a reinvention of himself. And instead, he tripled down on what were the worst parts about his personality. The things, because his numbers are unimpeachable. And he has some great playoff moments that we're showing, whether it's playing the Super Bowl on a broken leg as a veteran or the amazing catch from Steve Young to beat the Packers in that playoff game in one of his first years in the league. But that's not what we think of when we think of T.O. anymore.
And you have to wonder whether, as he grows older, and you're right, the crowds stop cheering, and this is your last hurrah. It's the last time there'll be microphones around you and people dying to hear what you have to say, if he regrets the way he has handled this, or if, like you said, he wants to double and triple down on the fact that it's T.O. against the Hall.
Every person, Hall of Famers included, they all have their own reality. We all live in our own little world. T.O.'s created this world. He's going to live in it. And I'm not surprised at all. The number one way to predict future behavior is past behavior. And I didn't expect T.O. to be a great Hall of Famer, all right? Just like he wasn't a great teammate. So I'm not surprised at all. So I wouldn't be surprised if he did other things, too, as he goes on his journey to the Hall.
All right, we're going to take a break there. Talk some basketball on the other side. We haven't said LeBron in a few minutes, so let's say LeBron. How long will it take for LeBron and the Lakers to gel? That's next. This is First Things First, live in Nationals Park for the MLB All-Star Game. Welcome back to First Things First, live from Washington, D.C., where traffic is light. But we aren't. We are heavy, rich with material for the All-Star Game.
Check out the nation's capital.
Beautiful. It's beautiful. A gorgeous day today.
Absolutely.
It's the perfect backdrop for a little home run derby tonight, a little all-star game tomorrow, and for a little bit of us right here with you for this morning. It is time now for what we like to call Say What? On Saturday, ace first baseman Mark Canha came to the plate in the 7th inning as a pinch hitter launched a 2-run home run. After the game, he had some interesting thoughts about his backflip. Say what?
People getting offended by bat flips is so silly. It's just like, I'm not sorry. I'm not really sorry. It's part of our game. Everybody does it. If somebody's going to throw at me because of it, I got thrown at in the past this season for bat flipping. I clearly didn't learn my lesson. So, if you're offended by that, I don't care.
Oh, I love this guy.
How do you not love the honesty?
Oh, this is great. I'm going to be honest. The Oakland A's aren't super high on my radar right now, but that guy, I love it, man. Style your home runs. And the fact that it's just generally accepted if you style a home run, the fair retaliation is 96 miles an hour in the center of your back.
And then you get up and do it
me.
again. No, I know. I should have learned my lesson, but guess what? I didn't.
Baseball players are a bunch of chumps. They got all these stupid baseball rules and everything. Oh, I'm a tough guy. A guy's up there with a bat. I'm going to throw and beam him with the ball. Oh, that makes you a tough guy.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say how they need to retaliate. But
listen, you're all for styling a home run, right? Come on. Yeah.
Listen, if you wanted to do something, throw a better pitch.
There you go.
I mean, you have a chance to not make sure they have a bat flip.
But if anyone wants to style a home run, I would say it would be a wide receiver.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
I mean, do your job. If you throw your pitch and I do my job, you just didn't do yours as good as mine.
And
We're
by the
all
way,
good.
just real quick, all pitchers all the time after a big strikeout to end the inning, get all history on it, get all
Fist
hyped
pumpy
up.
and everything.
Nothing batters can do back to them.
All right. Let's move on. Time now for some stories to start your morning. Orioles shortstop Manny Machado is on the trade block, and the Yankees might be interested. However, according to reports, they refused to give up any of their top 10 prospects for him. Nick, you were a little surprised by this morning. Should the Yankees do whatever it takes to get Machado?
Listen, no, I wouldn't do whatever it takes. If I was going to try to go all in on a move, it would be to add another starting pitcher. They have plenty of batting, and Machado wants to be a shortstop. They got a great shortstop, our guy Didi. But the fact that they wouldn't trade any of their top 10, not Baseball America's top 10,
no, their
the Yankees' individual top 10, few of those guys are outside of the top 75 total prospects. That is wild to me.
The Yankees front office has done a tremendous job with their prospects of late. This is a young ball club, and their shortstop is Didi. That's our guy. No, we don't want to see him traded to the Yanks. The Yanks are doing well. Stay pat right now. Don't give up any of them young prospects.
And C might have some sources on where Machado's going later in the show.
Ooh, I like it. All right,
he's
moving
like
on to
Kawhi.
moving on to Clayton Kershaw. He's staying in San Antonio. Machado. He has started just 4 games since the beginning of June, missing time with biceps tendonitis. But Kershaw says he's in, quote, good spot heading into the second half of the year. See, will Clayton Kershaw bounce back as the season goes on?
We hope so. I mean, we hope so. We don't want a repeat of what we saw in the first half of the season. The Dodgers need him to be in top form, and Major League Baseball. Since the Dodgers have been involved in the last couple years in the postseason, brings a little excitement. Dodgers, Cubs, Yankees, Red Sox, Houston Astros. Yeah, I'm in for it. Let's go, Kurt. Let's go.
I think he will bounce back, but right now he has one of the most amazing streaks in sports history going, which is he has lowered his career ERA every single year of his career. That means this year, to keep that up, he has to finish with an ERA below 2.37.
Not
right
easy.
now, it's at 2.74. So I'm hoping for a bounce back second half and a second half that keeps that unbelievable streak going.
All right, the Home Run Derby, as we mentioned, takes place tonight right here behind us at Nationals Park. The favorites include the hometown hero, Bryce Harper, Brewers first baseman Jesus Andujar, and Cubs left fielder Kyle Schwarber. Nick, I hate to put you on the spot, but let me put you on the spot. Who wins the Home Run Derby?
Javi Baez. I'm just going with my guy, Javi Baez. I think he likes the big stage. I think I mentioned earlier, I like his swag. He's got one of the coolest tattoos in pro sports. The Major League Baseball logo tattooed right above where it is on his jersey. I think he's going to milk this crowd. I don't even think he's the Vegas favorite on his own team, but he's my pick. I might have put a few, as CC would put it, shekels on him. Javi Baez, Home Run Derby champ. Take it to the bank.
A little second baseman. He's a little undersized. The weather is going to play a factor later on today. High today in D.C., probably around 94. Humidity around 130. Humidity. So I'm going with Schwarber.
His teammate?
That's my hometown hero. We're from the same hometown, Middletown, Ohio. So there's no reach there. Ohio up in the house.
All right, moving on to the NFL now. DeMarco Murray retired from the NFL after a 7-year career. Murray spent some time with the Cowboys, the Eagles, and the Titans. CC, how are you going to remember DeMarco Murray's career?
I'm totally shocked when it said he was only played 7 years. You would have think that he was a guy that probably had around 10,000, 12,000 yards rushing. He had played at least 10 years. No, 7 years. I think that we take for granted how long or how short NFL careers are, observing he only played 7 years.
Just a few years ago, he's the offensive player of the year in the NFL. Now he's retired, but what is 7 years? That's double 3.5. What's 3.5? The average
average
career. So it's a hell of a run, but it also speaks to, for pro football players in particular, how long of a view of life they've got to take when he had a great career, I feel like, and he's 30 years old, and he's now has to start his second career. That 1 year with the Cowboys is what is most memorable from him.
All right, finally, the World Cup impressed us all this weekend, and not just from everyone's Instagram accounts. Everyone needed to let us know they were watching. France exploded offensively to beat Croatia in the World Cup final 4-2. We got some offense, boys. Goals from Pogba and Mbappe helped cap the 2018 FIFA World Cup in style for an excellent French side. Cece, how impressed were you with what you saw out of this French team?
Oh, very impressed. Not only their talent level, how they approached the whole World Cup. We talked about this being the most exciting World Cup that we could remember, and finishing off with the 4-2 win. They have everything. You had set plays, you had penalties, you had everything in this World Cup that you want to see, but the class of the World Cup was definitely France.
Listen, France was the best team throughout this tournament. And see, I don't think you're going to like this, but man, oh man, I felt badly for Croatia in the first half of this game on Sunday. Croatia dominated the first half from a shots perspective, from a possession perspective. How did France get its 2 goals? First one was on a set piece, a beautifully done set piece, but on a phantom call. Right? It was a good job by the French player drawing the foul, but there wasn't a foul. How did they get their second goal? That video-assisted review, like, you guys know how I feel about replay in sports. And so it changed the tenor of the game.
And the Croatian coach said that, too. He said after that happened, it took all the air out of our team.
And Croatia still had its chances, and they still needed to defend better in the second half. And France was the better team throughout this tournament. But it felt to me like Croatia played a much better opening 45, and for their trouble, they were, instead of being up 1-0, down 2-1. Then in the second half, they have to be more aggressive. They have to take more chances. They allow the third goal, and then, of course, the fourth goal, which essentially ended it. But from start to finish, France was the most impressive side in this tournament. I thought Croatia could have stolen it on Sunday, though.
Listen, we're a little biased just because it was on Fox. I have to say, and I think you guys both agree, this was the most entertaining, most exciting World Cup in recent memory, just from start to finish, and the Americans weren't even in it.
No, if you look at how the play went, we went through the first stages, very, very exciting, totally unpredictable. We didn't have the big guns. We saw them getting upset. We didn't have the continent of Africa making some type of impact. So we had a little bit of everything in this year's World Cup.
And this also goes to show you the talent level of this sport worldwide. So Germany had made at least the final 8 in every tournament since '54.
Wow.
They don't make it out of the knockout round. We thought we were going to get the Ronaldo-Messi quarterfinal matchup. Both of their teams get knocked out in the round of 16. Brazil gets knocked out earlier than expected. And yet, despite that, Paul Pogba is there at the end. Mbappe, Rakitic, Modric. Like, all these countries have such elite-level talent that no matter who ended up in the final 2, you were going to see star players. And this entire tournament, only 1 0-0 draw, and that was in a meaningless game at the end of the group stage.
I think Brazil is favored in the next World Cup
already. They're favored
already.
in all of them.
Okay,
every year. That's why I said I pick them every time. I think they're always the favorite.
All right, let's talk a little LeBron James. He had a very busy weekend. You know, it's hard to show up at a Laker game and make a splash. Laker games are usually, 20% players and 90% stars? Is that no?
Nope,
okay, we'll work on that again next time around. Yesterday, the Lakers played Summer League ball. The biggest star sat center court, LeBron James, in a pair of Laker shorts. Magic Johnson spoke over the weekend, preaching patience to his fans, even though they have LeBron James. Nick, I'll ask you, are you buying that LeBron can be as patient as Magic Johnson?
No.
No.
No,
Okay.
Listen, I'm sure LeBron believes he will be, and I'm sure LeBron will intently try to be. But I've seen this guy play for 15 years. I saw him go to Cleveland 4 years ago, write a letter saying how he knows they're not ready to win right now, how he knows it's going to be a long process. And by December of that year, he was so frustrated with where the team was at that he was taking a little Miami siesta. And then David Griffin, his former GM, said the happiest he'd ever seen LeBron, aside from winning the title, was the moment LeBron saw Timothy Mozgov in a hotel lobby for the first time because the Cavs had just traded for him and LeBron thought it was salvation they were getting a big man. That's how frustrated he was 4 months into his Cavs tenure. Like, look, LeBron can say he's going to be patient and take the long view. Once the games start, he holds his teammates to a super high standard, and he's never played with a team this young. There's going to be growing pains associated with that. I think it'll work out, but I don't think LeBron's going to be relaxed early.
I have to disagree with you on that one based on your point, the team being so young. LeBron realized this roster, and you could see with the early moves, it was a move of patience. That's why they signed Rondo to a 1 year. That's why they signed Lance to a 1 year. So LeBron has it baked in there. I'm going to have to be patient. So there's two things that he didn't have when he went to Miami and when he went back to Cleveland, that being a young team, and also he didn't have the Golden State Warriors as we know them. Golden State, the way they are now, you have nothing but patience. Houston, you got to be patient. Any other team that's trying to win a championship, you better be patient because of Golden State with their 4 All-Stars currently. Boogie Cousins added to that. So that right there, I believe that LeBron at no point in his career, and I believe this to be his last move. The Miami was not his last move. Going back to Cleveland was not his last move. With this being the last move of his career, he's going to have some patience in going to the Lakers.
What choice does LeBron have if he isn't patient at this point? The whole city, Magic, the league, they've all put stock into what he's going to do here. He knows it's a young team with a lot of rising up-and-coming talent. It would behoove him to be patient.
Well, listen, you say it would behoove him. He can't make trades. He can't fire the coach.
It's a big influence on all of that,
Yeah,
though.
but listen, they, from a team building perspective, are clearly taking the long view, and they will continue to. But what do I expect at some point this year, when the young players keep playing like young or start playing like young players, assuming if they don't get Kawhi, that we're going to see one of those passive-aggressive tweets from LeBron? Of course. Do I think we're going to potentially see another February what's wrong with LeBron story? Yeah, probably. Like the track record, you mentioned earlier, best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. We've seen that for, 6 straight Februaries from LeBron. There's one other added variable here that I think will test LeBron's patience more than Miami or Cleveland. And that is the regular season standings matter all of a sudden. He doesn't have the track record of, okay, I'll come in your building. If we don't have the best record in a playoff series, I'll steal home court in game 1. Eat that. Now you're in the West. And now all of a sudden a bad couple weeks and you can fall down to 6, 7, 8 in the standings. And now all of a sudden you aren't a favorite over Boston, even though they have home court. Like, that is a factor that LeBron's never had to deal with.
Yeah, that Western Conference, that's a real thing as far as the record. The difference between number 3 last year, Portland, and who was going to be number 8, and teams 9 and 10 who didn't make the playoffs, 3 games separating all those teams. Yes, the regular season becomes far more important, and LeBron realizes he's just trying to win one championship. So I think he'll have more patience in deciding with the Lakers this year.
Also, there's this freshness to his approach to basketball now. He's on a new team. His family's happy where he is. For the first time in many years, he's getting along with management. He likes who he's playing for. Maybe the approach is a little bit different. There's not necessarily a laid-back approach on the court, but let me wait and see how this team kind of grows with me.
Listen, I think he will absolutely be patient as far as trying to push the team to make moves. I don't think he'll do that. I don't think LeBron's going to ask them to make any win-now trades. They can take the longer view because he's not on a 1-year contract. I'm just telling you, my prediction is
we're gonna get a tweet in January.
We're going to see some visible frustration from him early because he has not. Since he's been this version of LeBron, he's never played with kids.
Yeah, but I don't believe that's part of being patient. If you're playing basketball and you're competing with people, you want to be able to try to win. You want to improve. You want to be competitive. And just because he's frustrated, that doesn't mean that he's still not patient. He's very, very demanding, not only of his own ability, but those around him. And that's the reason why he's an elite basketball player. He shouldn't be patient on a day-to-day basis. But from a long-term standpoint, I believe that with him, Rob Pelinka, and Magic, they will continue to have enough talks that LeBron will be patient.
Well, if optics or anything, it was great to see that he was courtside for a Summer League game, sat there for the whole game, didn't leave. He didn't get up once. He really wanted to see what was happening.
And those were dope shorts.
Listen, we are very honest with the audience all the time. I want you to know that whatever we're thinking, we generally tell you. You smell so good, and there's a fan that's attached right here, and I am just smelling CC. I would love to show people there's this fan that's just whipping CC
wafting towards
anything. They never use must and good smell.
Musk, not must. M-U-S-K. Musk is positive. Must is
anyway,
not.
I don't know what these guys are talking about.
I don't think there's a good brand.
You smell tremendous. If the fan was coming this way, I would smell you too. It's a shame this isn't smell-o-vision.
It's called Sauvage.
Smells really good. It's driving me crazy. Hey,
and Cece will take a free bottle if you're watching.
We got
folks, it's
take
Savage.
a break. Coming up, Steeler fans on high alert today. Can Pittsburgh and Le'Veon Bell get a long-term deal done before today's deadline? That's next on First Things First. Welcome back. We are inside Nationals Park, side of the All-Star game. Beautiful day here. First Things First. Taking over for a few hours before we let the others have their crack at the festivities.
Man, I'm just enjoying sitting here in this
First time
stadium.
here, Nick.
First time in this stadium. The signage is great. The grass looks amazing.
Hold on,
Cece was out there consulting with the landscapers earlier. It's just great. We just don't get out of the studio very often, given the time of the show, so early in the morning. If there's any live event out on the West Coast, it's almost impossible for us to go.
It's the day before.
And so it's just exciting to be out here. I'm just thrilled.
Alrighty then. We are going to go viral while Nick continues to take this in. Yesterday, France won the World Cup after an exhilarating tournament. Mbappe's goal in the 65th minute made him and the legendary Pelé the only two teens to ever score in the final game. Well, the game had social media in an absolute frenzy. Take a look at a couple of these. Texas defensive end J.J. Watt tweeted, "Mbappe is so fast. Literally, what were we all thinking?" You know, anytime anyone uses literally, it's my favorite. New Vikings quarterback Kirk Cousins tweeted out, "Croatia made it interesting. France was just too much. I hate that we have to wait another 4 years. # World Cup Finals." And soccer
More hot
legend
takes from Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins always with the cutting edge opinions.
So controversial. Zlatan,
Yeah,
go for
Ibrahimovic.
it. Yeah, what that guy said. He tweeted, "Let them talk, but the game speaks for itself." At Paul Pogba and # My Apprentice. It was really a great game.
It was an unbelievable game. C, I know how you feel about this, though. By 2020, certainly by, 2022, certainly by 2026, we need our Mbappe. He's out there somewhere. The American Mbappe is out there somewhere.
Better be playing soccer right now.
Well, by then, he certainly needs to be.
As a fetus.
Absolutely.
What Nick is referring to is a young, talented player that's got sprinter-like speed that we have thousands of them in America, but none of them are playing soccer. Nick, this is what? I got good news and bad news. Good news is the World Cup will be here, right, in 4 years?
8 years. In 8 years.
In another 8 years, yes. But there won't be a brother out there, Mbappe, running for the United States. He'll be playing the NFL or playing in the NBA.
Listen, I think they're right now is a 10 or 11-year-old that's a star multi-sport athlete that saw what Mbappe did, and while watching the coverage was like, hold up, someone paid $250 million just to have the right to pay him money? Maybe soccer's the way to go.
Well, they saw Paul George. They also saw LeBron. They also saw. I doubt that.
Maybe they're not 6'8", though.
And I'm sure their parents are talking to him.
The kid's 10 years old. He's already conflicted.
He's
having an identity crisis.
Absolutely.
All right, let's talk some football. It is deadline day for one Le'Veon Bell. The Pittsburgh Steelers know this. They're up on these sort of things. They have until 4 p.m. Eastern time today to ink a deal. Head coach Mike Tomlin said he's excited and hopeful Le'Veon Bell's deal gets done. But according to Ian Rappaport, neither side is optimistic it will happen. CC, how badly do Bell and the Steelers need to get this done today?
Well, I don't think they need to get the deal done. I think the Pittsburgh Steelers have decided that there's a certain cost that they're willing to put into their running back, Le'Veon Bell. They did that last year by making him a franchise. Did the same thing this year by making him a franchise. I don't look at them to give him the type of guarantees. We talked about DeMarco Murray, the shelf life of running backs. Why would you give him another 16, 17 million a year, in excess of 60 million over 4. So I think the Pittsburgh Steelers have done what they thought was right. They have Antonio signed up long-term. They have Ben signed up long-term. And those other resources, they're going to spread them throughout the team. I don't believe that they're going to sign L. Bell to a long-term contract.
DeMarco Murray is an interesting, I don't want to say cautionary tale, but an interesting comparison. DeMarco Murray in his 6th year in the league had almost 1,300 rushing yards. After his 7th year in the league, he retired. So L. Bell's played 5 years. Last year, he had almost 1,300 rushing yards. He shows no signs of slowing down, and stylistically, he's a different enough player than DeMarco Murray. You can see him lasting longer.
Well, it's not only the difference in style, but it's overall ability. He avoids far more contact than Murray was able to do, and Murray's a one-dimensional running back. He can only run downhill, not very, very good at running sideways, and not a very good receiver coming out of the backfield. Those are things that shortened his career.
And Bell is a lot of those things you said DeMarco Murray isn't good at. Bell is arguably the best in the league at, arguably the best pass-catching running back in football. He is the most patient running back that I've seen, and I hesitate to use his name, but the most patient running back I've seen since Barry Sanders. His ability to get the ball and almost stop and wait and look, all those reasons you would expect him to have a longer career. But the reason why I think it is very important, for these two sides to get a deal done is if they don't, this is his last year as a Pittsburgh Steeler.
Why is that so important, though?
Because
I think the Pittsburgh Steelers think it's more important to have Antonio Brown and have Ben Roethlisberger long-term than they do Le'Veon Bell.
They think that.
They obviously think that.
Yeah.
But theoretically, you could have all three. It's not like they're in negotiations with Bell and one of those guys. Those guys are already locked up. Now, maybe Big Ben is wanting a raise soon. AB is locked in. But if this is what has made the Pittsburgh Steelers special, or potentially special, because they haven't actually
what's made them a good fantasy team. Because they haven't been special.
Right, that's why I said what potentially special. A very high-powered offense that up until last year was tracking towards a long playoff run has been top 5 quarterback, top 5 wide receiver, top 5 running back. You lose the running back part of that, they're a different football team.
Why have the Steelers been so hesitant to just lock him up? They're going to do it with their quarterback. They did it with their star wide receiver. They have an opportunity to keep those 3 together and have this potent offense for years and years. And yet I feel like we play this game every year with the franchise tag with him.
Well, the thing about running backs, if you talk about the climate, how much are you going to invest in a top-flight running back? The numbers aren't there like quarterbacks and wide receivers, defensive linemen, linebackers that you would have to give him somewhere between $17 to $20 million. So the price of running backs has been held down. The shelf life of running backs has been basically the same. We know, as far as a star player, they stay in their prime shorter than the other positions. That's the reason why the Pittsburgh Steelers, I believe, besides a few little things off the field that the public doesn't know about, I believe why they haven't committed to him long term.
And with Antonio Brown, they made him the highest paid receiver in football, but not by a factor of 2. Like who's the highest paid guy? Okay, give AB an extra 15% on top of that and we're good. L. Bell wants to reset the running back marketplace. The 5th highest paid running back in football, 5th highest paid, makes around $7 million a year. The highest paid other than L. Bell is right around 10. Le'Veon was saying he wants $16 million. Like, even if he brings that down, I don't think the Steelers even want to pay him what they're paying him this year on the franchise tag long-term with guarantees. So I think if it was just make me the highest paid running back, that would have been done. But he wants that far more than that. He wants highest paid running back plus.
I'm sure Pittsburgh has offered him a contract where he would be the highest paid running back.
Absolutely right.
So there's this window that the Steelers have right now that they're playing with, and they've been very consistent the last couple of years. They just haven't quite gotten over the
hurdle,
Super Bowl,
over the
of course.
Patriots.
How much does this affect that window if you suddenly take Bell out of it?
Listen, I think Big Ben's obviously more important for them. I think Antonio Brown is more important for them. But people can't act like running backs the style or the ability of Le'Veon Bell grow on trees. Like, he is a special player for a reason. He is one of the best dual-threat running backs for a reason. I'm not going to act like if they don't have him, you can take him off the list of Super Bowl contenders. But you don't get better losing Le'Veon Bell. And to me, it adds more of a sense of urgency to this season.
Yeah, well, one thing, Jenna, is you look back, and when was the last time we've had a 1,500-yard rusher win a Super Bowl? When was the last time we had a 1,200-yard rusher win a Super Bowl? It's not important to winning a Super Bowl. Pittsburgh Steelers have not been an elite defense. I believe their chance of being elite on the defensive end when they get rid of the running back and spend some of those resources. So I'm not about fantasy football, and that's right now what they are. They're a good fantasy football team. They get a lot of points every week, but that defense has been weak, and to me, that's what's prevented them from being in the championship conversation.
All right, we're going to take a break. Coming up on the other side, oh boy, did you hear what Jerry Rice had to say? Is he the best football player ever? He seems to think so. That's next. This is First Things First. We are here at Nationals Park, side of the 89th All-Star Game. We'll be here today and tomorrow if you're around and they let you in. I don't know why they would, but come check us out in this early morning. We are going to go viral now. Yesterday in the World Cup, France won the 2018 title with a 4-2 win over Croatia. So check this cool moment out. After the game, France's manager, Didier Deschamps, doing a post-game press conference when the players crash it. You could see this happening with Belichick. I feel like he would totally enjoy this.
Really cool. Really cool. Just raw emotion. I mean, the World Cup, how many people get that opportunity there? It's nice to see. I've never seen any type of celebration like this.
It's great. And for Didier, he becomes just the third person ever to be a World Cup champion as a player and then as a manager. Really, really cool. They don't have the Gatorade baths in soccer. Instead, we got the champagne celebration at the press conference.
He had that, and then Mbappe scored a goal as a teenager. First to do that since Pele, so a lot of nice things happening for that French
very
team.
cool.
A lot to come. All right, moving on to Jerry Rice. Very good football player. Some would say one of the best. And by some, I mean him. He would say it. He said it. Jerry Rice thinks he is the best, recently reminding some fans just how good he was at an event with Charles Barkley. Take a listen.
2,895 yards. Keep going. 208 touchdowns. 15 Super Bowls. I'm the best football player of all time.
All right, so there's a chance that the moment perhaps got a little bit away from a little too much fervor, but what was your reaction to Jerry Jones?
Jerry Rice.
Jerry Rice, sorry.
Jerry Jones, I'm the best dadgum owner ever.
Could be the same reaction.
You know, I've actually been a part of conversations like this, not amongst the Hall of Famers, but amongst other athletes. And I get that. I've been asked that question so many times over the last 20 years. Is Jerry Rice the greatest football player ever? Now, most of us Hall of Famers, first of all, Jerry is doing that at the Lake Tahoe at the golf tournament where they have all the celebrities and everything. That's the only place he can do that. He can't do that in Canton because we wouldn't have any talk like that. We're all on the same team. And he would get some backlash. Mike Irvin would be like, man, I'm a better football player than you, immediately. But Jerry should be.
And he probably knows that too,
well,
Jerry.
Jerry knows that, and he knows the Hall of Fame rules, all right? And he knows we're not here to talk about that. Then there's a guy that walks in with a cane named Jim Brown that would probably be able to silence Jerry's conversation if Jerry decided to have it. But we have had the conversation before as athletes. Jerry would definitely be in the conversation with me as one of the 5 greatest football players ever. I could even represent because of his distance between whoever is the number 2 receiver and his ability to be able to score on the football field. So you can say, is Jerry Rice the greatest football player ever? That's one argument. Is he the greatest person that's ever scoring the football? You know, is he the most dangerous football player? You could have him in that conversation. Longevity, expertise in his prime, Pro Bowls, All-Pro, all those things, Jerry Rice would still be in the conversation.
Listen, you don't, and I'm not going to ask you to because I know you don't like doing lists in general, but particularly when it comes to pro football, and that's not because you're a Hall of Famer and you know these guys. It's because with football, how the hell do you determine who's better? Jim Brown, Deion Sanders. when they never did the same thing. Forget the eras. It's not about that. It's about how do you compare the value of someone who prevents touchdowns, someone who scores touchdowns.
The other sports are easier to compare because you have more carryover. Even in hockey, you have both players typically going to be back on some defense. You either have offense or defensive players. Baseball, guys do the same. You're either batting or you're throwing. Right.
With
basketball,
exactly.
Everyone's got to be on the 94-foot court.
It's cleaner in every sport except football. In football, it's separated by positions. And most people would believe, in fact, it's almost universally held, Jerry Rice, at the very least, is the greatest receiver ever. Now, one could make the argument Jerry Rice, of all the great receivers, far and away had the greatest quarterback situation ever, going from Montana to Steve Young for the bulk of his career before he ended up in Oakland. And in Oakland, by the way, I believe he had Rich Gannon. Rich Gannon was pretty damn good at that point as well, coming off an MVP year. So
the only person to compare it to would be Marvin Harrison, what he had with Peyton Manning, and it wasn't interrupted.
You're absolutely right. Marvin Harrison's a great example because he had Peyton his entire career. Here's what I do know, though. I do know that when Jerry Rice walks into the Ray Nitschke luncheon, everyone doesn't stand and applaud. And that's not to take a shot at Jerry Rice, but that is, they do that
only if he went back to the braids and everything, where he started the braids in the middle of his head going back.
Who do they do that for, C?
Only Jim Brown. Only Jim Brown. Jim Brown, when he walks into the room, all the other Hall of Famers do stand up and applaud. Jim Brown does have the numbers. He's got the reputation, and he's got the overall respect of the current Hall of Famers.
You spend every day waiting for someone to walk up to you on the street and say, can you give me a list of anything? So I'm gonna do it for you. Give me a list. Give me your wide receiver
it's so
list.
hard. Well, top receivers is not that hard, actually. It's Jerry, Cris, Randy, T.O., and then there's a long argument for fifth place. And you can go a lot of different ways with fifth place, and I don't want to get that wrong off the top of my head. If I'm talking football players ever, I think Jim Brown, Jerry, and it got to get so hard, like Deion or Lawrence Taylor. Brady's got to be on there. It is so difficult in pro football. But I do want to take this opportunity to ask you this question, C. Because Jerry Rice was not Randy's height. He wasn't T.O.'s strength. I would argue, he didn't have your hands. He's not the best ever at any measurable. What is it that allowed him to play 20 years, I would argue 18 of those at a super high level? Part about the stories about him growing up that are legendary, is it true that his dad used to essentially throw bricks at him? How did Jerry become Jerry? Because it's not like he was some can't-miss superstar prospect.
Yeah, Jerry did work with his dad in the summer. His dad did work as a roofer, and part of that was throwing bricks from the top of the roof, and Jerry and his brother would catch them on the ground. The thing that Jerry Rice was number one
That's so dangerous.
And I would tell you that I'd have to disagree with you. Jerry Rice is the best conditioned athlete I've ever seen. He took training to a whole nother level. The long hill that he used to run on to help his overall endurance. Now, Jerry Rice wasn't fast on the clock, but he had game speed. I never saw anyone catch him. He was the #1 football player ever at catch and run. They didn't talk about yards after catch until Jerry Rice. Also, mentally tough. After separating his shoulder in Super Bowl against the San Diego Chargers in Miami, I remember him laying on the table at the Pro Bowl, telling the doctors that he was going to play in the Pro Bowl, and there was nothing on the line. The NFL had to remove him from that. So as far as overall focus, as far as not the best athlete, but the best condition, the #1 focused and disciplined athlete that I've ever been around, Jerry Rice was #1 at that. As far as a high achiever who kept changing his goals so that he might be have an edge to him, Jerry Rice was the best at that. Now, the other players that you would include in the conversation would have to be Deion Sanders, who I believe to be the best bump and run cover guy. Jim Brown, the best running back to ever play the game. Joe Montana, the best quarterback, him and Tom Brady. And on the outside, you mentioned Lawrence Taylor. I'll mention a couple other. Bruce Smith from Virginia Tech from this area, and also my loved friend Reggie Reggie White. So those would be the players that I would include as far as the best football. If you want to have a conversation, it would start with those 6 or 7 names.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to make an overall list of best football players, and we keep doing it anyway. But Jerry Rice, no matter what, would bridge both of those lists.
Well, and the numbers are one of my favorite stats with C is the touchdowns, because the reality is, I mentioned it earlier, when C retired, he was 2nd in catches, but the game has changed so much. He's now 5th in catches, and you're going to drop on that list as time goes on. You've dropped in yards, but the touchdowns, when you retired, you're 2nd in receiving touchdowns. You're now 4th in receiving touchdowns. Nobody active is too close to you. So touchdowns, because even as the game changed, the scoring has stayed around the same. You still score about the same amount of touchdowns a game. Why do I say that? Man, Randy's got 156, right? Jerry's got 197. 197 touchdowns. And I mean, he had, you got me one time early in doing this show when I just kind of said flippantly, I was like, well, one thing Randy had was the single greatest receiving year ever, obviously.
No.
And that was the year he broke Jerry Rice's touchdown record, the undefeated Patriots. And you just said, you were like, didn't Jerry get 22 touchdowns in 12 games?
Yes.
That was year 3 for Jerry Rice. 22 touchdowns in a 12-game strike-shortened season.
Yeah, and the reason why the touchdown mark is there is not only because Jerry's consistency and how long he stayed in his prime, but how long did Jerry Rice play on a top 5 offense? That's why the numbers are that way. Randy Moss, he played on 2 of the most prolific, the 98 and then the 07 New England Pats. Broke our scoring record. So when you're up there with teams that are scoring points at a prolific pace, you're going to be up there. Jerry was one of a kind as far as scoring touchdowns, though.
Did you guys ever see the movie Naked Gun?
Of course.
Many times during that movie, there'd be a million things happening while they were trying to.
Yeah.
Just to give people an idea, we're not absent of the fact that there's construction in front of us. Announcements are being
don't
made.
Even know.
There was a funeral procession that went through. The Notre Dame band came through about
takes,
5
Jenna.
minutes ago.
No problem.
There's a lot going on.
If you can catch the ball across the middle in the NFL, you can not be distracted.
Absolutely. And if you can 6-hand multi-table online poker, you can do this.
Okay,
so
well,
we're
I
all
can't
good.
do either of those things, so I'm a complete
Jenna's
and utter.
explaining it.
I'm embracing failure.